Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of the Let's Talk About It podcast by по-Английски, по-Британски. I'm your host, Ivan. It's been a while since we met last time, but here I am and there you are. So let's not waste our time now and get cracking. This time I'm going to tell you a brief history of the company that manufactures the car, which is an engineering masterpiece and regarded as one of the most prestigious signs of wealth and prominent position of the owner in the society. The name of this company and the car is Rolls-Royce, and we are going to dive deep in its history. But before we start, remember that you can always find the script and word set for this episode on my Boosty at boosty.to/Britishly. You can find all the useful links in the description of this episode. Well, are you ready to start? Let's talk about it. On the 4th of May this year, the British company Rolls-Royce celebrated its 120th anniversary since its foundation in 1904. It was on this day when Henry Royce met Sir Charles Rolls, which resulted in their joint and highly profitable car business. Subsequently, the company also began to produce aircraft engines, which, unlike the prestigious Rolls-Royce cars, conquered the mass market and now generate multi-billion dollars in revenues. The most interesting thing here is that Henry Royce and Sir Charles Rolls were such different people from different backgrounds that it seems amazing that they met at all. So, let's first learn about Charles Rolls. Charles Stuart Rolls was born in 1877 to Lord and Lady Langatoke. After graduating from Eton School, as it is in such families, Charles got into the engineering department of Trinity College at Cambridge. At that time, he already had a great passion for cars, and his family was rich, so his parents bought them one during the years of study. Could you imagine? But none of the other Trinity College students could afford a car at that time. It was too expensive. Nevertheless, calling Charles a golden boy was impossible. He never allowed anyone to fix his car, always doing it by himself, constantly fiddling with the engine, fuel pipe or oil filters. Actually, for always being oil covered, he got his very famous nicknames, Dirty Rolls and Pet Rolls, the second literally coming from petrol and rolls. His ability to handle the car brought results quite quickly. For example, in 1903, Rolls set a new world speed record in a car, riding a French model Morse with a capacity of 30 horsepower. He accelerated to 133.5 kilometers an hour. Unfortunately, the record wasn't approved because the timing system used during the race wasn't officially certified. It was an expensive occupation, which actually had already been gradually becoming his lifestyle rather than a hobby. Charles Rolls understood that he needed his own money for it. So he and a friend of his founded one of the first car dealer networks in Britain under the name of C.S. Rolls & Company. They were engaged in import and distribution of French Peugeot and Belgian Minerva. And that was one hand. And on the other hand was Henry Royce, who was noticeably older. He was born in 1863 into a regular family with an average income. Because of that, he had to start his career at the age of 9, selling newspapers and delivering post. At the age of 14, he became an apprentice on the railway. The teenager liked his job so much that he used it not only to earn a living, but also to study mathematics, geometry, electrical engineering, and basic engineering. In a few years, he was so successful at gaining new knowledge that he was able to get a permanent position at the Electric Light and Power Company. Royce soon decided to start his own business, which was a rather peculiar achievement of a man of his age. Later, when he earned first good money, he made his first business decision founding a company which produced dynamos and electric doorbells. In short time, his company became relatively successful and he made his first big earnings, which allowed him to buy his first car, a second-hand two-cylinder Decoville. That was how Royce got to know automotive technology, which quickly became his passion and remained that way for the rest of his life. The young engineer found several flaws in the French car and began to refine them on his own. The improved car attracted much attention of regular folk, and hence one of his company's shareholders, Henry Edmunds, who instantly was an acquaintance of Charles Rolls. By that time, Charles had become bored with the ordinary and already simple for him resale business, and was looking for an expansion into some other car-related business fields. So, it was Harry Edmonds who was the key figure in bringing together the ambitious aristocrat racer Charles Rolls and the ambitious engineer-inventor Henry Royce. As soon as they met, they both felt they were soulmates, no less. Charles, feeling that Henry had the potential to build cars which would change the industry for good, suggested that they created their own manufacturing company, hence handling the cars through the already established dealer network. And that's how Rolls-Royce was born. Director of Corporate Relations at Rolls-Royce Motor Cars Andrew Bowles reckoned that the meeting of Charles Rolls and Henry Royce had been to some extent predetermined. The lines of their lives and careers seemed to run in such a way that they couldn't help but one day intersect. Nevertheless, in fact, their meeting happened due to a bunch of coincidences and mutual acquaintances. If not for all this, the meeting of two such extraordinary people with such different backgrounds, who'd grown up in such different conditions, would have hardly ever happened. The first Rolls-Royce cars were presented to the public in December of 1904 at the Paris Motor Show, and then the model released in 1907, the 50-horsepower six-cylinder Silver Ghost, brought the company worldwide fame and recognition. Judging by the standards of that time, it was a real masterpiece. Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost was far better than any of the other existing cars of that time, and it would be far-fetched to say that everyone could afford it. The price was about $12,000, which doesn't sound much, but it's about $200,000 at present, which is about 17 million rubles. The modern brand new Rolls-Royce Ghost Extended Edition will cost you around 63 million rubles. So we can see that that price wasn't so enormous, but still being fairly big. From 1907 to 1925, Rolls-Royce produced only about 6,000 such cars. The number wasn't so impressive just because the car was an elite piece of product, a prestigious feature that every prominent person would want to obtain. Rolls-Royce chose that path once and for all, never ever producing mass-market cars in their history. They really wanted their product to be unique and perfect, which was impossible in terms of cheap and easily affordable cars. Charles Rolls preferred cars of exceptional quality, the quality that Henry Royce could provide with ease, producing cars with impressive technical characteristics. Charles Rolls was an enthusiast of technology and mechanics, so over time his interest expanded into the field of aircraft. That way, he became highly interested not only in aircraft itself, but in being the person in charge of the machine, becoming one of the first British aeronauts, flying either balloons or the first airplanes. In 1907, Rolls offered Henry to start manufacturing airplane engines, but the partner wasn't so enthusiastic about this idea, preferring to do more familiar business rather than trying something new. No one could see dark days coming towards Rolls-Royce, but on the 12th of July, 1910, Charles Rolls passed away crashing during a flight on the Wright brothers' Model A plane. It wasn't the fault of the brothers, or the plane itself. It was Charles who liked to experiment and tried to do so, but wasn't aware of the plane being not able to withstand. So at one of the turns the tail of the aircraft fell off, leaving Rolls without the ability to operate the plane. He died on the spot having a hard landing, becoming the first British person to die in a plane crash. Henry Royce continued to do the business, now as the one and only its leader, constantly improving Rolls-Royce models. Unfortunately, in 1914, the First World War broke out. So the British government turned to private businesses, calling for all possible assistance in protecting the country. Henry Royce didn't stand aside and bravely took part in this affair. At the request of the authorities, he began the production of the aircraft engine for combat planes. The first Rolls-Royce Eagle engine came off the assembly line in 1915. After the war ended, Royce was able to return to business as usual. Even the economic difficulties of the post-war period didn't force Rolls-Royce to quit the production of exceptionally expensive and prestigious cars. Country-wise, Rolls-Royce was in demand not only by aristocrats, bankers, industrialists and other capitalists, but surprisingly, by communists. The owner of one of Silver Ghosts was the leader of the Soviet Union, Vladimir Lenin. If he had lived a little bit longer, he could have used his established ties with Rolls-Royce to buy another British luxury car from another new brand, Bentley, which Rolls-Royce acquired later in 1931. Unfortunately, in 2 years after that date, in 1933, Henry Royce died at the age of 70, but the company continued Charles and Henry's business, producing not only cars but aircraft engines as well. Pretty soon, in 1939, it came in handy for the country when the Second World War broke out. Rolls-Royce supplied engines for Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane fighters, which were used not only by the United Kingdom Army but the USSR as well. As it's known, there were about 3,000 Hawker Hurricanes and 1,000 Spitfires supplied to the USSR, so many Soviet pilots could be proud of flying machines with Rolls-Royce engines. The wartime forced Rolls-Royce to expand their aircraft engine manufacturing, so after it ended, the production of aircraft engines had already been an essential part of Rolls-Royce business. Their aircraft engines, as well as it always been with the cars, were highly appreciated for their exceptional reliability, which proved itself in severe combat conditions. So later in 1953, the company began to conquer the market of civil aviation, producing the most reliable engines the commercial aircraft had ever seen. In comparison to their automotive business, which was far enough from the words massive and affordable, Rolls-Royce's aviation business expanded rapidly, taking big chunks of the market away with every coming month. Nevertheless, their car business was highly successful in its niche, providing unique and outstanding models to those who were ready to pay fortunes. For instance, the owners of Rolls-Royce cars were such chosen ones as Frank Sinatra, Ernest Hemingway, Rudyard Kipling, Muhammad Ali, John Lennon, Leonid Brezhnev, and Paul McCartney. Those cars weren't appreciated for only being expensive and unique. It was more about their quality. Rolls-Royce always used the best materials, and their engines were just outlandish, working silently even at a high speed, and being reliable enough to work years without any serious issues. The service and options which Rolls-Royce provided to their clients accomplished the picture of the perfect car. One could and still can choose not only the color and any other basic features, but for example, even decide if there would be a minibar, a phone or computer, and many more other options. Their two most recognized features that they use nowadays are Spirit of Ecstasy, which you can see on the bonnet of every existing Rolls-Royce, and their Starlight headliner, which is a bespoke feature that is uniquely made for every client. It's not a simple headliner anymore. It's a night sky above your head. Meanwhile, Rolls-Royce engines were put into civil aircraft that carried hundreds of thousands of regular passengers. In 1966, Rolls-Royce acquired the British company Bristol Siddeley Engines, which took part in the development of the engine for the unique Harrier fighter with an ability of vertical takeoff and landing. Moreover, they designed and developed the heavy-duty Olympus engines, which were put into the famous Concorde. Unsurprisingly, in 1960s, Rolls-Royce engine manufacturing operations began to bring the company significantly more profit than car sales. Nevertheless, it was the engine manufacturing that caused Rolls-Royce big problems, which led the company onto the verge of bankruptcy and to the further loss of independence. In the late 1960s, Rolls-Royce began a fight with American General Electric for a huge contract from Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. Despite being a major market player, the British company made a number of serious financial miscalculations, which resulted in large losses and the inability of the company to serve its debt obligations in the future. Hence, in 1971, Rolls-Royce went bankrupt and straight into the hands of the government, which had the money and ability to repay debts. Then the company was divided into two independent ones: Rolls-Royce Motor Holdings Limited, which was engaged in automotive production, and Rolls-Royce Limited, which was responsible for the future development of aircraft engines. In 1980, Rolls-Royce Motor Holdings Limited was sold to the British company Vickers Limited. Rolls-Royce's aviation branch was in the government hands for much longer. It wasn't until 1987, under Margaret Thatcher's governments, that the company returned to the stock market as Rolls-Royce plc. The growing popularity of passenger air travel allowed Rolls-Royce plc to quickly regain its lost ground. Under the new competent management, Rolls-Royce conquered the market without any kind of trouble, and by the end of 1980s, their engines were installed on 17 different types of planes, while the nearest competitors, General Electric and Pratt & Whitney, had their engines only 14 and 10 types of planes respectively. In the 21st century, Rolls-Royce's aviation business continued to grow rapidly. The company reached multi-billion-dollar turnover, remembering to invest heavily into new developments. For example, between 2010 and 2018 alone, Rolls-Royce plc invested £11 billion in scientific research, which allowed them to release several new lines of engines during that time. Talking about big numbers, the present annual turnover of the company is around £16 billion, and it has about 15,000 people employed. Rolls-Royce plc is included in the FTSE 100 index of the 100 largest British public companies, with a market capitalization of £34.5 billion. The Rolls-Royce car business was a completely different story. After 17 years of ownership, in 1997, Vickers decided to sell it. There were several rivals for the purchase: German Daimler-Benz, Volkswagen, BMW, and the RRAG, which was an assembly of patriotic, wealthy British people. However, the patriots failed to defend the legend from being sold to another country. At that time, the best price proposal was from Volkswagen, so it didn't take Vickers long to think it through, and they agreed to sell it to the company. Nevertheless, the deal wasn't done easily because Rolls-Royce plc, which owned the rights to use the Rolls-Royce brand, preferred an alliance with BMW. As a result, the company was split, with Volkswagen receiving Rolls-Royce Motor Holdings manufacturing facilities and the entire Bentley Motors company, and BMW receiving the rights to use the Rolls-Royce brand. Following the deal, BMW granted Volkswagen a license to use the Rolls-Royce brand until 2003. After the license expired, BMW became the full exclusive owner of Rolls-Royce Motor Cars Limited. Volkswagen in its turn continued to use the production facilities of Rolls-Royce Motor Holdings to produce cars under the Bentley brand. Now those two are the largest rivals in the field of luxury cars. Under the BMW management, Rolls-Royce Motor Cars still continues to develop and produce cars for millionaires, bankers, Arab sheikhs, show business stars, and politicians. It has never produced a car for regular people, which, as we can reckon, has been a strong and right decision, because nowadays their strategy allows the company not only to maintain, but also to gradually increase their sales. For you to see, in 2010, Rolls-Royce sold only 2,711 cars, in 2015, 3,785, and in 2023, 6,032 cars. As the representative of Rolls-Royce always say, the most important achievement of Rolls-Royce has always been to make the name synonymous with exceptional quality. Moreover, there's even a saying that every product, device or service that has an exceptional quality, respect and strong reputation is called the Rolls-Royce of its industry. So, that's a pretty cool fact about Rolls-Royce to wrap it up at. It's been a brief history of Rolls-Royce. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you have, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons, because there are more fascinating and incredible episodes to come. Moreover, if you have any trouble understanding this episode, go on my Boosty and boosty.to/Britishly, and you'll find the script and word set for this episode at a fair price. All the links are in the description to this episode. And the last, but not the least, if you have trouble learning English or you are feeling stuck not knowing what to do to develop your knowledge, then you can always write me on Angliski по-Британски on VK and ask for help. I'm always glad to see new faces joining the courses. Thank you for listening. My name's been Ivan. Stay tuned. Ta-da!